I wanted to, if you would, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could stand and remove your caps, and above us to the front as we say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I would like to introduce U.S. Senator Judd Gregg. Thank you, Senator. First off, Kathy and I love being in Exeter. Of course, we come over here all the time anyway, from Rye. But it's always a pleasure to be back here because our son swam on the swim team, and of course, I went to a little small school down the street here where they tried to teach me things like spelling, and I was never any good at it. So they just gave up on me. And in fact, I have one story I have to tell you. I was with Dr. Brown, who taught me math, and I met him after I had been named chairman of the budget committee. And I went up to him, I said, Dr. Brown, do you remember me? I'm Judd Gregg. He said, yeah, I remember you. I had you in math. He said, yeah, I know that. He said, you know, I'm chairman of the budget committee now for the United States. He said, I know. I gave you a D. Anyway, it's a great pleasure to be here. You know, we have a very serious responsibility here in New Hampshire, and that's why you're here today. Like you, I've looked at all the candidates, listened to the candidates. That's our job, because nowhere else does this opportunity occur where you get to meet the candidates and talk to them and then go and vote. As we know, in Iowa they pick corn, but here we pick presidents. And as a very practical matter, that's a big charge. And so we have to do it seriously, and you are doing it seriously. Just by being here today, you show that. And people all across the state, that's the case. And when I and Kathy looked at the candidates, we came to a very simple conclusion. We want to have Jeb Bush as our next president. And I'll tell you why. 3 basic reasons. Number one, we have to win. We cannot afford another 4 years of the type of presidency we've just had for 8 years. This nation must move forward, and it must move forward aggressively. And Jeb Bush has shown he can win, and win in the key state of Florida. Secondly, we have to have somebody who's extremely substantive on the issues, who understands the complex issues and recognizes that you don't answer them with Duck Dynasty one-liners. You answer them with substance. And he's done that. He's got tremendously strong policies in areas like how we get this country to grow and give people opportunity to have a better life, how we protect ourselves, and how we maintain our fiscal responsibility. And thirdly, we need somebody who can govern. And you don't govern by standing in the corners and shouting. In our system, you govern by getting in the middle of the ring and working with people and getting results. And he's shown he can do that as governor. And he'll do it as president. So it's a great pleasure for Kathy and I to join with you in having Jeb Bush here today in Exeter. Jeb Bush.
Thank you very much. Before we start, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Corporal Andrew Ainsbury from Dover, who was killed in a training exercise, a 21-year-old kid who graduated from high school and got an AA degree. Clearly someone who was focused on the future, serving as an Army Ranger, and his family is grieving the loss of this fine young man, and I thought it'd be appropriate to pause and reflect on that. Thank you all very much. I'm a candidate for President of the United States because I believe we're still the most extraordinary country on the face of the earth. I find it remarkable that we have candidates basically saying the end is near, that our country no longer is great. Don't worry, I'll fix it, because we'll make America great again without any plans. But the simple fact is we are an extraordinary country. We're comprised of Americans, for starters. That separates us from the rest of the pack. We are a place where people's dreams come true more often here than any other place. But today in America, things aren't working the way they could. Today in America, we're really at an intersection of whether we're going to restore our greatness for everybody, whether we're going to create an America that is an economic superpower, and whether or not the United States will lead the world towards peace and security. This election is about a few big, really complex things. Added on top of that, the dangerous time that we're in, the asymmetric threat of terror that now threatens our way of life. And I think we need a serious person that has detailed plans to keep us safer and stronger and freer. And that is why I'm running for President of the United States and why I'm excited about doing it. Under this administration, for the first time in a long while, this president does not believe that America's leadership in the world is a force for good. We have gutted the military. $1 trillion less spending than what was planned. Now, part of that is the drawdown because of Afghanistan and Iraq. That's fine. We don't have to spend money. That's not the measurement of our strength. But we have gutted the readiness of our military. Our counterintelligence and intelligence capability at a time where we have big threats has been gutted as well. Today, we're on a trend line of 420,000 Army soldiers. Everybody that I've talked to says we need to get back to 480,000 soldiers to be truly ready to take on the threats that exist. Our Air Force, still a superior Air Force in every way because of the incredible pilots and the technology around these planes. But our airplanes, the B-52, for example, started under Harry Truman. The pilots are younger than the age of the planes. It is a dangerous time, and as we gut our military, our friends no longer think that we have their back. And our enemies no longer believe that we're serious. And when you combine that with the language of grandiosity, of red lines, of Russia being the JV team, across the entire globe, where our president brags about how strong we are, but never has the will to act, we now see what happens. A caliphate the size of Indiana. 30 to 40,000 battle-tested terrorists. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton believe that containing ISIS is actually a strategy. Well, no. If it's a strategy, it's a failed one. Because containing ISIS every day that it exists is a victory for them. It allows them to send out hundreds of thousands of messages over the internet to try to recruit and radicalize people who are disenchanted with Western civilization. It allows them to say, I'm winning, we're winning, and that the great United States is losing. We need a strategy to destroy ISIS, not to contain it. And I laid out that plan at the Reagan Library in August. And it starts with arming the Kurds, not indirectly through the Iraqi government, but directly by making sure that our strongest ally have all the tools necessary to be effective. It also means we need to embed in the Iraqi military, and that we need to reestablish the partnership with the Sunni tribal leaders that was effective in bringing a fragile stability to Iraq. It means we need to get the lawyers off the backs of the warfighters. Because right now, this president puts so many conditions on our ability to act in the national security interests that the net result is that lawyers actually have to approve sorties, which is why 75% of all the flights that take off, 75% go back without sending their weapons, sending their ordnances into the ground. We need more intelligence capability. We need to forward lean to be able to have air controllers identify where the targets are. We need to use whatever resources we have to narrow the ability to garner money to keep keep their operations financed. We need safe zones in Syria. The way to solve the refugee problem is to allow people to stay in their country. 4 million people are in refugee camps in the neighborhood. It's a breeding ground for Islamic terrorism if we do nothing. We need a no-fly zone in Syria. People immediately say, well, how are you going to do that? Russia won't allow that to happen. Well, Russia should be more worried about us than we being worried about them. We're the United States of America. If we go about the business of protecting the homeland, which means reestablishing the provisions of the Patriot Act that allow us to be able to be kept safe, and for those that are worried about civil liberties, this great country, the way we protect our freedoms is to keep ourselves safe. If we don't do anything, if we just allow this to be viewed as a law enforcement exercise rather than the challenge of our times, there will be attacks on the homeland. There will be people that are organizing to destroy our way of life, to make us freeze in place, to create hardship economically and across the board. I believe we need a president that has a steady hand. The front-running candidate for president on the Republican side in September, late September, said, ISIS is not a threat. We don't need to deal with it. The front-running candidate for president of the United States says he gets his military advice from the shows. Really? Look, being a leader requires one simple first step, which is know what you don't know. Have the humility to recognize you can't have all of the answers, but then seek out the best and the brightest people to forge a strategy and lead. On the first day I'm president, I will ask the military to give me options to destroy ISIS, to redeploy our military in a way that keeps us safe, and I will have their back. You will not see Jeb Bush be an agitator-in-chief. You'll see him being a faithful commander-in-chief, which is exactly what we need. We also need to fix how we tax and how we regulate, embrace the energy revolution in our midst, grow our economy at a far faster rate. People are struggling right now. Hillary Clinton has given Barack Obama an A for his performance. That's not surprising. He's quite popular on the left, and Hillary Clinton is running on the left. I'm not surprised by that. But is it really an A when 1 in 10 people have given up looking for work or are unemployed? Is it really an A that 1 in 7 Americans in this extraordinary, prosperous country are living in poverty? 6 million more people today than the day that Barack Obama was inaugurated? Is it really an A that 1 in 5 children is on food stamps? Is it really an A when more businesses close that are being formed? Is it really an A when we've lost our competitive edge? And disposable income, the great definition of how the great middle of our country is doing, is down $2,300 per family. $2,300 median disposable income. That means decisions have to be made about whether a child's going to go to college, or decisions will be made about how you take care of your elder mom who may have dementia. Maybe it means you can't take a vacation, you can't purchase a car. It may mean you can't get a caregiver to come give you some respite, to be able to re-energize, to provide support for a child that may have developmental disabilities. It means a lot of things for a lot of people, but it's not good news when $2,300 in decline exists than the day that Barack Obama was inaugurated. Here's my pledge to you. Each day that I wake up as president, I will work with Congress, not telling them how bad things are. I will work with Congress to fix the big complex things that allow our country to rise up again. We should be the economic superpower of the world, and we could do it if we fix how we tax, how we regulate, fix the broken entitlement challenges system that will overwhelm everything else that exists, embrace the energy revolution in our midst. We could see growing income again. The final part of my story is one that I want to share. I'll share a story with you that gets to the heart of what I believe about leadership and about conservatism. I was a candidate in 1998. I ran for governor, and I lost in 94. I was one of 2 people that I know that lost in 1994 as a Republican. One was Mitt Romney, a really fine, decent man, and myself. We both lost to people that never lost. So whenever a young person asks me for advice for politics, my first advice is run against a bad candidate, not a good one. It's a better chance of winning. But the 94 experience made me reevaluate myself as a person. You always learn, right? When you learn from your mistakes, you learn from your downturns rather than when things are going great. That's how life works. So I put the pause button on my life, and I didn't know if I was going to run again, but I pledged to myself if I ran, I would run in a different way. I wanted to listen first. And so I was in a town hall meeting in Fort Lauderdale, and a woman, angry as all get out, raises her hand and says, "You don't care about people like me." Never met her. Thought that was a little unfair, to be honest with you, but in these kind of settings, you take it all in. And she said, "You don't care, you're a conservative. You don't care about my family. My child is 15 years old. She can't talk, she can't walk, she has severe autism, she has challenges that I can't describe to you, and she has an IQ of 50. Her name is Luce. And my biggest fear, and my husband Milton's biggest fear, is whether we will outlive our child, who is a gift from God. Wow. That's pretty strong. And I knew I wasn't going to convince her, so I said, tell you what, you be the teacher, I'll be the student. I'll give you as many days as you want to have to teach me what it's like to wake up each morning wondering whether you're going to outlive your child. And she took me up on it. Her name is Bertie Aponte de la Rosa. She's actually come here to campaign with me here to tell this story in New Hampshire. And so she took me to group homes where I saw the dignity of life, the respect for life that should be the case for every person with developmental disabilities. We went to the institutionalized care that cost a lot more, but people weren't treated with respect. We went to workplaces where people were hired that had physical and intellectual challenges, and it lit up the workplace. Their co-workers loved it. The customers loved it. And I learned so much by listening. And so I get elected. And in 1998, I get elected. In 1999, literally in the first week, I'm summoned to Miami, my hometown, by a federal judge who says, I'm taking over the program for the developmentally disabled because you don't care. The legislature hadn't funded all this properly. I'm so sick and tired of this. And you're a conservative, and I'm guessing you don't care either. Well, the net effect was I got a stay of execution, if you will. Got to go to the legislature, a conservative legislature. We funded the programs. And within 18 months, 31,000 families got off a waiting list. We transformed the entire program. And the net effect of that, in essence, is that families were less worried about whether they were going to outlive their loved one. Now, this story is a story of leadership because it's not about the big personalities on the stage. It's not about the people running. It's about people that want to have a chance to reach their God-given abilities. We need people that have a servant's heart in leadership positions today, rather than the opposite. And it's also a philosophy that I think is important. The left believes that we have problems, that we have liabilities, and that what we have to do, life's not fair. And that what we have to do is just get in line. And the federal government, particularly through more spending and regulation, will take care of us. We have to believe that life is a gift from God, that is divinely inspired, that everybody has a chance to make a contribution, that everybody, if they reach their full potential, we will create a society that is much more loving and caring, where people can pursue their dreams as they see fit, and where we'll lead the world. That's what I believe. It isn't the government that's going to solve these problems. It's us together solving these problems. And recognizing that Luz Aponte has as much value as I do or you do is the first step in recognizing the potential of this country. That's what I believe. I believe it to be true. And so my pledge to you is, I'm going to campaign with my arms wide open, with joy in my heart, because this is the greatest country on the face of the earth. We just have to start acting like it again. And when we do, we'll make sure that our children and grandchildren have as much or more opportunities than what we've had. That's my mission, and I ask for your support. Thank you all very much. How you doing? There's a microphone back there, and yes, sir.
How you doing, Mr. Bush?
I'm doing well.
My name is Tony Woody. I'm Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, retired.
Appreciate your service, sir.
Served 22 years. At 21 years old, do you know what a P-3 Orion aircraft is?
Excuse me?
A P-3 Orion.
Yeah.
I was qualified flight engineer at 21 years old on a P-3 Orion.
Wow. You know who the only guy I know that did it earlier? My dad.
Love to meet him someday. I'm here, excuse me, it's a little too close. I'm here about the VA issues.
Yes, sir.
Now, just a little bit about my family's background. My dad served in war. I grew up in Texas, but my dad served in World War II. He lied about his age at 16 and climbed on board the USS Comstock, built right here in Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, and I happen to live 20 minutes from there. I served 22 years. My brother served for 4. My niece served, and my son is active duty gunny sergeant with 19 years in right now.
Wow.
And I am very active in the issues going on with the VA scandal and the horrible things going on in the VA. This is a nationwide problem. I'll tell you how angry we are, sir. Myself and 6 other veterans litigated a case without a lawyer all the way to the Supreme Court. We knocked on the door of the Supreme Court with a writ of certiorari asking for a hearing, and we were denied a hearing. We were filing criminal charges, and they told us they don't have jurisdiction over our case, telling us we have to go back to the VA. But we were talking about wrongful death, murder, treason, things like that. Okay? When veterans, this is a legal precedent-setting case. What this now means is any veteran, now or future, meaning my son who's serving on active duty right now, ever files a criminal claim against the VA for any of the charges we put in here, they can throw it out of court. They're telling us we have no jurisdiction over these things, and that means we have nowhere to go. The VA's not going to take these things and hear it. Why would murder and wrongful death
Well, that's why you're here.
be considered a benefit? That makes this the most ludicrous judicial ruling in the history of the United States. The Ninth Circuit Court, which we know is extremely liberal, did this to us, and we need our justice. We are tired of seeing thousands die. Let me put this into context, sir. Over 22 a day are dying from suicide just because they can't get access to the VA because of the incompetence of the leadership. We're talking about leadership.
Yep.
They keep saying they need to retrain. No, they need to bring in the Department of Justice and throw a bunch of people in jail and put real leaders in
So,
there.
I completely agree with you. Let me tell you what I would do.
And one more thing in context. When you have over 8,000 a year dying because of suicide, just that alone is the equivalent of a World War II Bataan death march every year.
So, I'm glad you brought it up, and
Here's the lawsuit.
fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. I will definitely look at that. I'm not a lawyer, and probably not one, so, but I'll get a lawyer to look at it. I'll tell you a quick story. Bud Day, the most highly decorated American hero, who passed away last year, had a lawsuit to deal with the lack of veterans benefits, the lack of access, and he won. He won that case. He went after serving as a Medal of Honor winner, won everything, longest serving person, most highly decorated while he was alive. He went back to law school and successfully litigated a case on behalf of veterans that were denied benefits. Here's what we should do. We need career civil service reform for starters. The lifetime employment attitude of the federal government is just wrong. Why would it be that the federal government has lifetime protections and in the private sector there's none? Why should it be that their benefits and salaries are 40% higher than like-kind people in the private sector? It's wrong. It's inappropriate. If you want to get better service, then you have to eliminate lifetime employment. Florida, we did that. We eliminated career civil service protection, not to be punitive. In fact, here's some members of the legislature that led the charge in that regard. It was to bring about better service. So while Florida led the nation in job growth during my 8 years, we had 11% reduction in the workforce because you could fire someone for incompetence. And in the Veterans Administration, trust me, as you know, there are thousands of people. There's 340,000 people that work at the VAs. Many of them are fine doctors and nurses doing great work, but the bureaucracy is not accountable. So number one, we need to reform career civil service. Number two, they should not be involved in procurement or construction. They have no clue how to do that. The Army Corps should be responsible for that. Three, and this is the most powerful tool, veterans should have greater access to choices. If they want to go to a private provider, they ought to have that right. If they want to go to see their doctor in their neighborhood, they shouldn't have to wait 30 days and have to travel 46.7 miles, all this bureaucratic nonsense. It should be veteran-centered rather than system-centered. The net result of that would be that veterans hospitals and clinics would have to adjust and change. 3 or 4, we need to have the Veterans Administration be a center for excellence for the diseases and the challenges of post-military life, post-traumatic stress. There are a lot of women veterans now that have special needs. There should be focus on that. We should adapt the Veterans Administration to the reality of what the veterans, the veterans' challenges are going to be going forward. I I will reform the Veterans Administration, I promise you that, and it'll be the first priority, and there'll be heads rolling.
Bring in the Department of Justice, because there are crimes happening
I'm going to look at that.
all the time.
I'm going to look at that.
Right here in this hospital.
So what he's talking about in general, there may be other specific cases of waiting lists where people got bonuses, $142 million of bonuses last year, veterans management. They got bonuses, and in some cases they got bonuses for reducing the waiting list without giving people care.
That's called racketeering, by the way.
Three people have been fired in that effort, and people died. And there's no accountability. In this administration, whenever there's a problem, the dog ate my homework. Here's the deal. Real leadership means when you see something like that happen, you accept responsibility and you fix it. You don't say, you know, it was my brother's fault. That was the first impulse during the first years. You don't say it's somebody else's fault, or you don't ignore it like we did in Benghazi and these other places. Man up, accept responsibility, fix the thing, and be clear about how you're going to do it so people know.
Can I say one last thing?
Just one last thing, because you're taking a lot of time from other people.
If you really want to know what's going on, there's a Facebook page that got started a couple of years ago by a guy in Indiana.
Okay.
It's called VA is Lying. That's the name of
So I can remember that one.
22,000 veterans on there. We have connected with other organizations. We can reach out to 500,000 veterans.
You have your name on
Yes,
this?
sir. Contact information is all on that page.
Tony Woody.
On the back of that disc.
All right. Appreciate you.
So we're coming.
Thank you.
Veterans are coming.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and thanks for coming today, Governor Bush. I guess my question more had to do, and I'm sure you're sick of talking about him, Donald Trump. And, you know, I commend you for denouncing his comments about Muslims and banning all Muslims from the country. And I guess my question's more one of clarification. I saw at a press conference a couple of weeks ago you had mentioned, you know, we should allow orphans in, which is great.
Well, yeah, I mean, someone asked me, should an orphan be allowed in?
Right, yeah. Yeah, no.
I don't know, I've never been asked that question, but I would think that orphans are probably not going to be Islamic terrorists.
Absolutely, but you had also mentioned, you had talked about Christians.
Yeah.
And we should, if you can prove you're a Christian, you should be allowed in. But I was wondering if you could clarify, isn't that kind of sending the same dog whistle message that Islam is bad and dangerous?
No.
Because it seems kind of similar. A different, less straightforward way of saying it, but
Not at
the
all.
same thing.
Not at all, but I appreciate the comment. First, banning all Muslims means the largest Muslim populations in the world are Indonesia, India, Pakistan. It's not in the Arab world. So the notion that you're banning all Muslims sends a really bad signal to people that we cooperate with economically, diplomatically across the board. We need to have, in a connected world, we need to have relationships that are important. It also means that the Kurds, I don't think Donald Trump knows that Kurdish people are Muslim. You know, that wouldn't be like one of the things that naturally comes to him. So he doesn't have much intellectual curiosity. But it means the Kurds who are asking to fight the fight wouldn't be allowed to come to the country to talk. Or King Abdullah from Jordan, who is on the front lines, can't come because he's Muslim. I mean, think about I get the point of trying to make this case about how we need to tighten up our border and make sure that our immigration laws reflect this new reality. I totally agree with that. But to do this makes it hard to do what we need to do, which is fight the fight there. We need to destroy ISIS, and you can't do that in isolation of the Arab and Muslim world. That's my point. As it relates to screening, here's the problem. Christians in the Middle East are being obliterated. Simply by being a Christian, you will be beheaded if you're inside of ISIS-controlled territories. You'll be enslaved if you're a woman, and you'll be beheaded and killed. There is no safe harbor for a Yazidi, for religious minorities in the Middle East. They are being decimated. In Mosul, Mass had been said consistently for the last 1,500 years, no longer. Now if you're a Christian in Iraq, you lose your property, you lose everything. And I believe that we have a special responsibility to take care of religious minorities. That's the difference. The difference is, can you send a Christian to a refugee camp? A Muslim-oriented refugee? No, you can't. because it's too dangerous. That's the challenge. We can sit back and let the slaughter take place, or we can say our values we should insist on the fact that our values compel us to provide safe harbor. Whether it's in our country or not is not really the relevant point. It's to engage in a way to protect people because of their faith are being beheaded. I don't know if you saw the YouTube of the Coptic Egyptians being beheaded one after the other on the shores of the Mediterranean while they're saying the Lord's Prayer. I don't know about you, but that's deeply, deeply troubling to me. And I think the United States needs to stand for the Christians, whether they're in Nigeria or other places where they're being persecuted because of their faith. I just believe it. So as it relates to how you screen and all that, there are ways to show a Christian in Iraq lives in a certain community. They have certain names. They have birth certificates. You can find all that. And all that stuff would have to be done, of course. Similarly, we have to come up with new arrangements as it relates to how we screen refugees in general, because now we have this new threat that didn't exist. Look, I was governor of the state where we had large refugee populations coming from, say, Haiti. It never crossed my mind that the thousands of refugees that we saved their lives by allowing them to come, that they were radical Islamic Muslim terrorists in their midst, because there weren't. This is a new reality that we have to be certain about. So screening in a different way is important. Secondly, we have a visa waiver program in this country that expedites the travel from countries in Europe, particularly in Asia. The European countries now have large Muslim populations. You could have a passport and be radicalized and have an easy access to this country. Well, I think it's appropriate for Congress to look at taking a second screen and suggesting if you're traveling frequently to the Middle East or to Syria or to Iraq or other countries where terrorism is on the run, that you have to go through a further background check. You just don't have automatic visas for that. We need to control our border and be serious about it. There's lots of things that we can do, but the blanket statement of banning all Muslims, it's a great soundbite. But he's not a serious person. He's a chaotic candidate, and he loves the chaos because it's all about him. The day that he made that statement, the day before, Barack Obama gave perhaps his worst speech of his presidency, where he talked about, he only got animated on the attacks of San Bernardino, it seems to me, by talking about gun control, as though gun control is the issue. The issue is Islamic terrorism. We need a strategy to destroy ISIS and to engage in the world to be successful in keeping our homeland safe. And that, because Donald Trump basically sucked the air out of the whole conversation, no one is focused on what we should be focusing on, which is this foreign policy that Hillary Clinton wants to double down on has failed us. We need a new approach with a new leader that is focused on a serious way to keep us safe. Other than that, I don't like it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm also with the ARP.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate what you did at the summit. It was very nice to see you there.
I liked it.
And it was very good, and you had a very good position on Social Security. I'm wondering now, well, you've been thinking about it, is it possible for you to get it through Congress?
Great question. So my plan is to raise the retirement age starting in 2022. I basically stole this from Senator Gregg, so just rewind the tape. Judd's been on this issue for a long while, a practical, pragmatic solution with bipartisan consensus. There is a path out, but it requires bipartisanship. There's no other way to do this. And interestingly, whether it's Paul Ryan's cooperation with Senator Wyden, a Democrat from Oregon, or the commissions that have been formed that have Republicans and Democrats, they basically call for the same thing. Gradually raising the retirement age. In our case, it starts at 2022. Changing the benefit structure in a way that is rational and reasonable. In our case, we raise the floor so that everybody that retires has 125% of poverty being the basic minimum. Because I think there's a lot of elderly, increasingly, they're going to be near or at the poverty level. And I think we have a duty to rectify that. Right now the benefit is 80% of the poverty level. We raise it, and then we lower the benefit level for higher income people. If you do all of those together, and you create incentives for private savings, you can resolve this problem. And it has to be. You can't do this without Democratic support. So this will be, I mean, are we going to be constantly in a massive food fight? Is that the, I mean, because if that's the case, that's tough. I mean, we're going to keep fighting and never get anything done. I think we're going to see a decline in our country. We have to go back to regular order way. The omnibus bill is an example of dysfunction. At least the government didn't get shut down. I mean, kudos, that's the low bar. We now measure how things go on in Washington. I mean, that's ridiculous. Go back to the business of forging consensus, assuming that people that disagree with you aren't bad people. I mean, maybe that's the first step. I don't think that Barack Obama is a bad person. I apologize if that offends you. But I think he's wrong. There's a difference. You have to engage people and find common ground. When you assume bad motives for people, you automatically assume that nothing's ever going to get done. And this country can't afford that anymore. The founding of our country was based on consensus.
I'd like to...
You got a mic coming your way?
Yes, my concern about Social Security is that in the past, funds were taken from the Social Security Fund
They have, yeah.
for other programs. And I mind very much when politicians suggest that we should retire later. We should take our Social Security later. Yes, we're living longer, we are, but we're also in pain with elderly physical problems. We can't all work until we're 70. So that's why I'm against that. Also, I would like to see Congress take a pay cut and put that money back in the Social Security Fund where it belongs, where we deserve it. We shouldn't be forced to work till we're 70, because physically, maybe some of us can, but a lot of us can't. So please, think it over. I hope you don't make the decision to raise it.
So it's being raised already. Under Reagan and Tip O'Neill, we've raised it, and it's at 66 now. It'll go to 67. And minimum retirement, the early retirement benefit in my plan goes to 65. So we still are recognizing that, you know, there should be two options. But look, you cut the pay. I'm all for that. I'm for term limits. I'm for cutting the pay. I'm for making sure that every law they pass, that it applies to them. I mean, there's some common sense things that we need to do. A pay cut for 535 people won't make Social Security solvent. It won't make it solvent. We got to make it solvent, which means that you have to figure out ways to make sure it's protected for those that have it. And nothing in my plan suggests that anybody's benefits would be cut. If you're up till 2022, the old system stays the same. And going forward, it would be modified, adjusted over 30 years to get to the point where retirement age by 2052 would be 70. I think that is a common sense approach. And here's the other side of this. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and whoever else is running on their team, they'll have a debate tonight, they'll say there's no problem in Social Security. They're in the witness protection program on this. I mean, they don't think that there is an issue. But you brought up the basic point. It is insolvent already because we have replaced cash with IOUs. We've spent the money already. We haven't been serious about dealing with this issue. And I think people are going to want common sense solutions to this because everybody knows that the world demographically in every way has changed. We have 3 people working to pay for 1 person. And you add children to the mix, and the ratios are really completely different than they were just 20 or 30 years ago. Yes, sir. NRA man. We got a mic coming.
There's a problem with our economy and our budget, and with all the debt and the debt that we've accumulated over time. How can we make our military stronger but also reduce spending?
Great question. Fantastic question. One way is entitlement reform and reforming Social Security. Those two things together is where most of the increased costs projected out over the next 2 decades come in that area. So we have to reform it. I have detailed plans, as I mentioned, on Social Security. Similarly with Medicaid and Medicare, I believe we should reform those as well. And the plans that we've laid out save hundreds of billions of dollars over a 10-year time frame. And it's not just me saying it. I've asked every one of these plans that I've laid out, I've gotten independent people to score them, that terminology in Washington that measures what the costs will be if you change the certain parameters, what the savings or what the additional costs will be. So that's number one. Number two, wherever possible, we should shift power back from Washington to the states. And we need career civil service reform. The good news, by the way, about federal employees is that there is a huge number about ready to retire. It's good for them. It's also good for us if you believe that we should shrink the beast. We could, just by attrition, you can reduce the federal government workforce by 10%. So that's the third element. Fourth, we have to grow the economy at a faster rate. You're never going to be able to get our way out of a structural budget deficit growing at 2%. For two reasons. One, the revenue that comes in is not going to be growing at the rate that the expenses are. And two, demands on government grow at 2%. We have 6 million more people living in poverty than the day that Barack Obama was elected because of tepid economic growth. And we need to reform everything. I mean, starting with welfare reform. Work should be a value again. This administration eliminated the work requirements. And the net effect is we have doubled the number of people on food stamps, increased the number of people dependent upon government, and not giving them a pathway to a more successful life of purpose, because work is a virtue. It is not a bad thing. It is a good thing, and it should be required for more people. So we can get there, but it's going to require higher growth and challenging discretionary spending, not related to the Defense Department, but I would increase spending on the military because we've had a dramatic decline in what was projected to be spent, and in a serious dangerous world, we need to make sure that we have a commitment to our military. Yes, sir. Coming right at you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous speaking, but it's an honor.
Take your time.
It's an honor to get to ask you. I see, I guess, since I've been growing up, I've seen one of the big things happening in this country is people seem more divided. I think you mentioned demographics before, and I think one of the worries I have is this country maybe becoming kind of a mix of really competing interests, ethnically, culturally, religiously, and I just see this happening in Europe right now with Sweden, Germany, these countries that are rapidly falling apart due to immigration in part. And my greatest worry is that's going to happen here. And so I guess my question is, how do you see that? How do we see that overcoming that challenge of changing demographics? Because we are undergoing a transition, and that can change the character of the country. It can change. I just don't want America to become like a dystopia of competing ethnic interests, I guess, where people don't come together.
Listen, for a guy who was really nervous, that was the most thoughtful question I've heard in a long while. Here's the genius of America, really the exceptional nature of America. It's a set of shared values that defines citizenship. It defines us. I mean, we're Baskin Robbins, 34 flavors and a couple of specials each week. I mean, we are diverse beyond belief. And the catalyst for our innovation, our creativity, our prosperity, generally the belief that things will always be brighter in the future, has been a set of shared values. And what you're saying, I think, is accurate, that those shared values are being eroded. That I'm not sure if we actually spent the time to kind of figure out what the shared values are in America today, that we could come up with some. That people might say, well, that's imposing your belief system on me. That's not fair. And that is dangerous. So this whole, the European experience of multiculturalism, where everybody's culture is equal, that there's no set of guiding kind of principles of how you organize your society, we have to reject. Here are a couple of things that I think would be helpful. Immigration reform is certainly one of the things that we need to do. But secondly, we need civics education. Have you ever seen the Jay Leno guys? Now it's the next, I don't know which guy does this. Does Kimmel do it where they go in the street and they ask questions like, you know, okay, everybody goes in. You know, you get these questions, answers, you know, questions that are quite simple and people can't answer them. Now, maybe they go 10 times before they find a really stupid response. But I think if you look at this, you'll find that our history no longer is one of those identifying things that unite us. And we have the most amazing history on the face of the earth. We have a history, and here you are in, you know, New Hampshire, you got more history than you know what to do with. We should have a sense of what makes America, how we overcame challenges, how we dealt with adversity, how we went through the Great Depression, how we led the world in World War II to save democracy and save freedom. These things are no longer as valued as they once were. And I believe whatever we do as it relates to immigration reform, we need to have a renewed sense of what ties us together, because we won't survive in a multicultural world. And then the second thing that's really important to me is we need to have politicians that stop dividing us up. Barack Obama is a master at this. It's this thing. Anybody that disagrees with me on Iran is a warmonger that's in cahoots with the Death to America trial. Really? Wow. Maybe there's a principal reason why someone opposes the agreement with Iran. There are a lot of good reasons why someone would. Don't ascribe bad motives to someone just because they disagree with you. Or Donald Trump, disparaging people left and right. Women, war heroes, POW participants, Latin, you know, Hispanics, disabled. Dividing us up in our disparate parts is not going to solve problems. We don't need someone to agitate anymore. We've already had 7 long years of this. We need someone that unites us again around common purposes. And that's why I'm running. I'm sick and tired of the divide.
I voted for your dad twice. I voted for your brother twice. I come to the primary with a very solid feeling about you in terms of your experience. But the question I have for you is this: 2 questions. One, how can you bring the passion that you're showing today more broadly to your campaign? But then secondly, I asked Governor Christie this question. Experience matters. I truly believe that. And if you think about that, you got you, Governor Christie, Governor Kasich, who have the governing experience that I think matters. What is it that you would tell this group that differentiates you, that says out of that group, if you believe experience matters, why should you be the one of those 3 that everybody votes for?
He's not shutting bridges down for one thing.
So first of all, I bring it every day. I mean, this is who I am. I'm an out campaign people. I can promise you that. I'm a hard-working guy. And the mythology built up that somehow I don't do this every day. I don't know where it started, and I don't know why it exists. I am all in on this, and I share my passion each and every day. And it's why in places like New Hampshire, we're making really good progress, because people get to see it. They don't have to watch it on TV. They get to see it. They get to interact. They get to joke with me. They get to be mad at me. They get to disagree with me from time to time. That's why New Hampshire politics is so important and special. So, number 1, don't worry about the energy thing. I can outwork everybody running, and I'm doing it. Number 2, as it relates to my record, I have the most accomplished, conservative, reform-minded record of anybody running for president. I'm telling you. I won the NRA Sportsman of the Year award, or Statesman of the Year award, and I got a rifle from Charlton Heston at the annual meeting. We eliminated affirmative action by executive order when I was governor, and we replaced it with a model that allowed for more African Americans and Hispanic kids to go to our universities, but not discriminating one group against the other. We created a system that worked far better without the discrimination inherent in affirmative action. We turned our child welfare system, we turned it from a government-run system that was broken into a community-based system. No other state did that. We were the first state to create a voucher program statewide. We had the 2nd and 3rd voucher programs. In Florida, if you have a kid with a learning disability, and you don't believe that your child is getting the proper education based on the IEP, the Individual Education Plan, you can send your kid with state and local dollars 100% funding to go to a private school. We turned this whole system upside down and we led the nation in job growth. Compare that to the other two candidates you're talking about. Compare it being the only state other than Delaware to go to AAA bond rating during my time. They called me Vito Corleone because I vetoed 2,500 separate line items in the budget, not to be punitive, but to create an environment where government income grew slower than people's income. And during my 8 years, the government was reduced by 13,000 workers, but we had 1.3 million jobs created, and personal income grew 4.4% per year. That record is unmatched by any candidate. Yes, sir.
How are we going to beat Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, do you want me to? Yeah. Okay, well, that's a good step. Look, in reality, you're the answer to the question. Right? You're the answer to the question. The question's a good one. The front-running candidate is going to be the front-running candidate. His whole organizing principle is that he's winning. Well, what happens if he stops winning? There's nothing there. There are no plans. There's nothing in his background that would suggest he would have the interest of actually forging consensus. So, look, I respect his skills as a gifted politician, but you're the answer. The question is, will New Hampshire want to support a guy who might tarnish this extraordinary reputation that you have, which is first in the primary status, where you make people walk through the hot coals each and every time they come, where you challenge people, where you help them learn how to get better at doing this. New Hampshire is an extraordinary part of this process, and I don't think Donald Trump's going to survive New Hampshire, to be honest with you, because I have too much confidence in you all.
Thank you for taking my question, Mr. Bush. My name is Kyle. I'm a student at the University of New Hampshire, and kind of getting back to the Department of Justice. There's been a lot of evidence mounting lately that Exxon has been funding climate denial for upwards of 30 years in the name of profits. Would you support a Department of Justice investigation into these allegations?
If they're real, I mean, I don't know what the criminal element would be, but I think the better approach is to have a Department of Justice that is more humble than the one we have today. I think we need one that respects the rule of law, that doesn't try to carry out political agendas, and takes their actions based on the evidence rather than being called in by the White House to carry out some political agenda. If there's criminal wrongdoing, I do believe that the Department of Justice should play a role. I'm not aware of that, though, as it relates to any of the oil companies. Yep.
I'm very concerned about with the last 8 years of Barack Obama, that everybody is now dependent on the government, like a drug. It seems like if you're successful, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
How are you going to change the mindset of the American people to make them feel like they really get off of the government and go out and earn their living and, feel good about what they do?
Great question. First, I think we need to provide more opportunities for people. 2% growth makes it harder for people to be lifted up. Whether you're in poverty or in the middle's getting squeezed, and people are more dependent. I mean, the intergenerational poverty has grown exponentially. One of the ways to do that, apart from high sustained economic growth, is welfare reform. Stem to stern welfare reform. Perhaps the greatest accomplishment of the last generation of time in terms of big policy changes was the 1990s welfare reform, where Republicans led the charge, and then Bill Clinton, after vetoing it a couple of times, supported it. And I mean, in our case, in Florida, we had a 90% reduction of people dependent upon government on welfare. 90%. Because of one basic thing, which was you either had to be looking for work or you had to be working in order to receive assistance. And I think that's the path. The path is to make sure that you have opportunities for people, and then make sure that the value and virtue of work is front and center. You don't want to create a society where people are dependent upon government. That's not the way to live a life of purpose and meaning. I love the way you asked the question at the end, because it isn't, people don't want to be dependent. But if it's better economically to do it, which it is in some cases, depending on the jurisdiction, then that has to change. I'll give you an example of one way to look at doing this. The United Kingdom, when the Conservatives came into power, promised to make big cuts in their welfare system, which was even bigger than ours, the welfare state. And they went through, they required people to go through a screening process again to see if they were qualified for the welfare benefits that they were receiving. And what they found was double-digit reductions in the caseload of people that were receiving government assistance because they were getting the money without being qualified to receive it. So we need to use our tools to be able to transform our welfare system into the 21st century. And then the second thing is not a federal program, but we need stem to stern revolutionary education reform in this country. Because if you're stuck without being able to read and write and calculate math, if you get I mean, there are people that graduate from high school today that can't take college courses and certainly can't get a job. Who's fooling who? Who thinks that's going to work? And the net effect is the world we're moving towards requires higher and higher skills that only come from a quality education. So yeah, part of it is the grit and determination of being able to get out and work and do it. The other part is you got to have the skills to be able to achieve earned success. And we're a long way off on making that the reality for a whole lot of people in our country. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Hattie Stofus in Epping, and I have a couple of, first of all, I want to commend you for your stance on the federal employees. I am a federal employee, and I want more accountability.
Good.
You know,
you can teach me how to do it then.
Well, I'd be glad to talk to you, but
yeah, no, I'm serious.
I'm a thorn in the side of my supervisors, so.
So you want to make sure we have whistleblower protections.
Exactly. And the
That's
second,
not a bad idea.
But my concern is back with the senior citizens. I am a senior citizen. I do plan to work until I'm 70, maybe 72. I've been told in my job there is no mandatory retirement age, and as long as I'm healthy, I will. But I am concerned that there are some senior citizens that I've been involved with that have little to no cost of living raise, and their premiums have increased. So they essentially are having a net loss in their income. I'm also concerned that those on Medicare and Medicaid sometimes cannot get the care that they need. If they're in nursing homes, the bottom line is how much money can we spend on each patient. I recently lost my best friend of 30 years. She was 71 years old, and there were times she was told she could not be in the hospital because she had no well time. She had no well time because she was on dialysis. This was a woman who worked until the day she died, ran the Chamber of Commerce of Salisbury, Massachusetts, from a nursing home. And she was an incredible woman, a very powerful woman, and has been named by the town manager of Salisbury that we lost the pillar of optimism. I used to live in Massachusetts. I live in New Hampshire now. And I'd like to see that issue addressed, especially for the elderly. It's just as bad as it is for the veterans.
Thank you very much. And first of all, you don't look like a senior citizen. I don't know what that... Well, come and give me a hug then. Let me try to answer part of the question. One of the things on the Social Security question that I didn't mention is that if you do have to work, in the plan that we laid out, if you're working past retirement age, the plan that I laid out suggests that you don't pay the employee portion of the payroll tax. You've already paid into it, and effectively if you're working with past 67 because you want to, or sadly, or in many cases, you have to, seems to me that you've given, you've basically paid, and so having that extra money, that extra 6+% that stays in your pocket is a good way to enhance savings. And we need to enhance savings for senior citizens. The savings rate in this country is way too low. Part of it is because our monetary policy, if you're trying to save, it's kind of hard at 0% interest rate policy. It's great for borrowing, not so hot for savings. But we need to make it easier for 401ks to be established, for small businesses, for people to be able to save. Everything we do should be incentives towards that, because Social Security was never designed to be the retirement plan. It was a supplemental retirement plan. And right now, the basic retirement monies that people used to get in the private sector has diminished greatly. As it relates to Medicare and nursing homes, I didn't quite understand because she was on dialysis. I've not heard that terminology before. I don't normally get stumped on the nerdy policy stuff, but you've stumped me. So I'm not quite sure what the answer to that is, but as it relates to care, long-term care, my belief is that the Florida experience, at least, leads me to believe that we ought to have many more options than just nursing homes. That we ought to have people, create a strategy for people to age in place effectively. I mean, nursing homes work. For some cases, you have to have that kind of care. But a lot of times, it could be lower cost and have more people benefiting by allowing them to be in a community-based kind of model. And in Florida, we started down that path when I was governor, and these guys right here actually expanded it, and it's the right thing to do. You may know that we have a few more elderly people in our state. So we're a place where experimentation works, and my suggestion would be that's a far better place to respect the elderly by giving them options rather than I have to impoverish myself to get into a nursing home to get the care I need. Maybe there's a better way of doing this where you can age in place and provide community-based solutions rather than have the higher cost solution be the only one. Yes, ma'am. Got a microphone coming your way.
Hi, I'm a public educator and I teach second grade, and I was just wondering what your thoughts are if you do get in office, what your goals are for the future for public education.
You bet. I guess I have to start by saying I'm passionate about education reform and education in general because I just know in my heart that too many kids are not going to have a life of purpose and meaning with the outcomes we have today. It's heartbreaking. And as governor of the state of Florida, I turned the whole place upside down. A lot of teachers at first got a little tired of me because change is hard. And I was impatient, I admit it. And we did turn the whole place upside down. The teachers union, when I ran for re-election, mortgaged their building to support my opponent. That shows you how our relationship kind of went from bad to worse. And I won, and they had to sell the building to pay off the mortgage. So there was a just reward at the end of that journey. But at the end, people said, look, I may not agree with everything that he's advocating, but he is all in on the subject. So we eliminated social promotion in third grade, this insidious idea that a third grader that's functionally illiterate can go to fourth grade. We had a third of our kids in our system that were measured that way. It's just wrong. You're not going to be able to read or calculate math if you're functionally illiterate. And so what happened was the second grade teachers and the kindergarten teachers and the pre-K teachers all got organized to assure that they were doing their jobs as well. And we increased the spending to make sure that there were the resources necessary to create a culture of literacy. And Florida went from literally the bottom of the pack to being a national leader in early childhood literacy, both four-year-olds as well as the K through side of the occasion. Anytime a state wants to take on entrenched interests on behalf of kids that can't read, as president, I'd be on their side. I would liberate the monies that go down to states that really want to reform things. The federal government's not going to be, we're not going to create a national school board. There's not going to be some guy in the White House saying, I'm in charge of curriculum and content and standards. That's not what we need. But we need a president that convenes and bangs heads and makes sure that this is the highest priority in our communities, that every child is given the chance to be able to achieve earned success with a quality education. And whenever someone wants to do something big and bold, the federal government ought to be their partner to allow for the laboratories of democracy all across this country to work. That's how you make progress. Our country is not a top-down country. We're a bottom-up country. We like dynamism. We like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, learn from your mistake, go forward 10 steps. That's the kind of America that's going to lead the world. And education is the key element for the next generation to be successful in that pursuit. Thank you all very much. I'm sorry I got to go. I've got 2 more town hall meetings today. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being here.